Previously, we talked about using breakpoints to debug. But what happens if I can't use a breakpoint to debug? You might think, well, when is that going to happen? Don't you have the source code material? And the answer is yes, but. So where do I have the ability to have my source code that I can edit, but I can't use a breakpoint? Well, there's about 3 main areas that you're going to run into where that's going to be a problem. Number 1, you're doing a server application. Something that runs on a server, does not get direct input from a user. Maybe it reads data files. Maybe it's taking network resources. And since you don't run through it on a desktop environment, you have a hard time debugging it. Number 2, very similarly, and where I actually ran into some problems with this, was in building plugins. That is an extension for an application. And so you have to compile this into a plugin, usually something like a DLL, and then it gets loaded into another application. It's running, and you may or may not have access to it. Now, the application where I did this a lot, actually it did give us a way to have access into it. It was a bunch of configuration settings, but we could, but it was challenging. And then the third, of course, is what happens if it happens on your end user's machine and you can't replicate the problem? Well, those are 3 different instances that can all happen, and I've dealt with personally. And so what we'll do is we'll use logging instead. So I've already got some logging set up, and we just want to kind of show you what it's like, and the fact that most modern languages will support logging in some format. Now, in some cases, it's an external part. That's a library you have to import in. In some cases, it's a library that comes with your programming language, and you can just use it right there. Either way, it is available, and if it's not, in either of those cases, you can always build it yourself. So let's look at this code first. It's some code, obviously in Java, as you can see, and I'm importing java.util.logging. And I have 3 different logging classes I use, as well as my IO exception. You can see why. So here I have something called FizzBuzz. FizzBuzz is a common program that you can see periodically. That's not relevant to this. However, what is relevant is I have here a static final logger. And so using a singleton design pattern, I'm going to get the logger, and this is going to allow me to be used over any different class, this particular one. In my get logger, I have a global logger name. I can set that, or I can give it something different if I want to have different types of log files. I have actually seen that, not in stuff I've developed, but in some other applications I've used and managed where they have multiple log files. That way they can send different things to different teams. And then in my main, I create my FizzBuzz. And then I do something interesting here. You see, without this little piece of code where I create a file handler, it's just going to write my log to the console. And that doesn't really solve anything. I might not have access to the console if it's on a client machine. So here I have the ability to write to a log file, and then what I tell them to do is go to this location, grab this file, and either email it to me, upload it via FTP, or some other format like that. So you notice it's just going to create my logfile.log. And then here's where we start to actually see some interesting values. Logger is the name of the static variable I created. So you see that here. And then I say logger.log. This is going to create a new entry. And then I say what level. And we're going to see more about levels in just a minute. But in this case, it's just an informational level. So this is just let me know, hey, I'm about to do something. In fb.run, you can see over here, I have some results. So you can kind of look through this, how it's going to work. But what I can do is I can then use logger anywhere I want to go write something. So for example, I don't have anything in here in my fizz, but I could come in here and say, you know what? I'm going to do logger.log. And then I can come in here and just like I did up here, we say level.info. I can say level.info. My message is going to be inside of fizz. And I'm going to leave parameter 1 null. So I'll just remove that. what I can do, and more importantly, here example in Buzz, I'm going to come over here and say, put this in a try. You might say, well, why am I going to do that? Well, this is a very common way that I'm going to use something like this. I'll return nothing just to make sure I have my return working okay. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, you know what? Logger.log level dot, and I could do warn. I could do severe. Okay, this is a serious failure. Warning is a warning of potential problem. We were able to catch it because of try catch. Maybe I might make it severe, saying there's a serious issue. We'll have to see, okay? I'm going to do warning in this case, and I'm going to say exception generated in Buzz, and then I'll do ex dot, and then I can use the get message, I can use the stack trace, whatever I want, in order to put it in there. So what am I doing? Well, I am letting it know, hey, I had an error message. It was a severe error message because I had that try except. This was severe because it was an exception that was generated, and therefore I want to work on fixing it. Format that just real quick so it looks a little bit nicer. Come right here and run. Notice it gives me the infos and all that type of stuff. If I come here to my log file.log, you can see it's generated an XML data file that gives all my information. It gives what data was created, how many milliseconds and nanoseconds, what sequence it was found in, what the class name that was found, what the method name that was in there, all that type of stuff along with my message. So now I have a lot of information that I can use. I can then take this and put it into another file if I need to in order to work with it. Now I want to show you how to do logging inside of Python, and I'm going to show you that in the next video. So it should be popping up on the screen in just a second, and you can click on it to find there if you're looking for how to do the same type of thing, but in a different language.